My name is Michael Belcher. I'm a cinematographer, and one of the things I love about watching and making movies is how it gives me the opportunity to engage with my truth meter, right? Like, or maybe my bullshit detector, you could say. I just love watching a performance or looking at a set or looking at lighting and asking myself, does this feel true and honest? Or is there artifice here? Is this aspirational? Is this trying too hard? What are the intentions here? And I think there are many layers to this, right? There's many different depths of truth. And it's a magical thing too. It's a mysterious thing, tracking the truth, because of course it's very personal and very subjective. And the kicker is that real true things are often more bizarre, theatrical, and surreal than things that are made up. Hence the phrase stranger than fiction. And this is something that Joel and Ethan Cohen manifest really well, really consistently, in my mind. They're able to capture this stranger than fiction quality that life often has. And there's lots of it in Fargo, their film from 1996. In this episode of the podcast, I talk about this quality to some extent with director Greg Brunkalla. Some quick background on Greg. Greg Brunkalla is a director who studied film at the Savannah College of Art and Design. After graduating, he moved to New York City, became an editor at Radical Media. From there, he pursued directing and founded Legs, a film division of Milk Studios based in New York City and LA. After 3 years, Greg departed Legs and has gone on to direct across many genres, including commercial, fashion, music video, live, experimental, installation, documentary, and short film. He's made commercials for clients like Delta, Coca-Cola, Uniqlo, Sony, and the New York Times. Music videos for The Avalanches, Danny Brown, and Vampire Weekend. Greg won the Tribeca Film Festival X Award for one of his documentaries, and he created a film installation at Art Basel, Miami, in collaboration with Andre 3000. And his latest short film, God, is based on a short story originally published in the Paris Review. Okay, thank you. Here we go. So, first question, how many times do you think you've seen Fargo?
Oh man, I don't know. This year I've seen Fargo 3 times.
No way.
And I've read the script twice. Yeah.
What? How's that?
I mean, because I've been working on my own script and it's kind of like the way that it's just a film that I like the structure of.
Yeah.
I've been kind of studying the script a little more than normal. But yeah, I don't know. I've watched it. I don't know. I've probably seen it a dozen times or more. I don't know if that sounds like a lot, but
Yeah, well, there's that funny way that films that we love can be easy reads, easy watches or hard watches, like there are some
yeah.
films. This is a film that's pretty easy to watch and you kind of jump in if you get distracted or start halfway or whatever and kind of dig in and enjoy it. And it's not too like, some of my favorite films they just cost you something, to get
Yeah.
invested and to be there and to really experience it. It can be kind of gut wrenching. So it's hard to revisit those more often, but this is one I feel like that. Yeah, it's very easy to come into.
Yeah, I think what I enjoy about when you talk about what's a film that you wish you would have made, I wasn't, gonna I didn't I I wanted to I really think about the full experience of making a film, not just like what I would want my name to be on,
Mm,
um, or what looks like it would have been, um, you know, uh, I would have been working with these certain actors or anything like that. I kind of think um, of the word made, of making, and that film looks, when I know how the Coen brothers work, like they're very specific about their shots, and like you read the script and it's pretty close. Um, it just seems like it would be a great film to actually be there making on that, a smaller budget. So yeah, it's not necessarily, I wouldn't say it's the film that I think would define who I am or anything like that. I don't know. I would have to make that. Um, but yeah, it just seems like it would have been a really great film like a rewarding film to make. I think the expectations were pretty low for it. As far as like they just kind of went and did their own thing. Um, and it was like I think it would have been a very rewarding sort of film to make, and not too much pressure. It seemed like they made that without all the pressure of all the studio kind of pressure that they could have easily fallen into.
Sure. Ian, I wonder for you, this coming out in the mid 90s with a lot of, with kind of a wave of independent films that were getting more attention and getting Oscar nominations. Did this film, I'm not sure how old you were when you saw it, but did it make an impression on you then?
So wait, what was the year again?
96. That's when I have
96. So
here.
I was like 16, you
Right.
know? Yeah. Lost my virginity probably. That's probably why I liked it. No, yeah, 96. Yeah, I was in high school, and I'm from the Midwest. What's that?
Did you see it when it came out?
I can't remember.
Yeah.
I can't remember if I saw it when, like, in the theater when it came out. I feel like I did, but I really don't remember. And also seeing films, like I don't know what year Blair Witch was, it was like around there, but you couldn't see that where I was from. I had to go into Chicago. I had to get on a train and go an hour. When there was an independent film, it wasn't playing in those theaters out in the malls, out in the suburbs. So I don't know. I can't remember if I saw it right when it came out or not.
Has it been a touchstone, you think, since, like, is it something you saw and you're like, this is kind of like a film that I really relate to, and had it in your back pocket as you got into the industry?
It's just something that it's a film that I always kind of go back to because I don't think it's pretentious. I don't I'm okay watching. I mean, I'm starting I've already started the Igmar Bergman box set, on Criterion, and I'm going through it like in order. Um and I can, appreciate all of that work, some of it more than others. Um and kind of like you said earlier, some of that takes a lot out of you watching that. And that's not, to me, that's not Fargo. Fargo is like an entertaining film. Um with, it's not like a heavy film, but to me, I like the blend of sort of violence and humor and ridiculous characters, you know? And that just feels, when I watch a film, actually, it's interesting that this is your um the name of your podcast. What would you like to have made? Because when I watch a film or a commercial or a music video, I think because of what we do, we're always thinking about how did they do that, or what would that have been like to make it. And when it looks stressful to make something, it's stressful for me to watch it. I watched Tenet, the other day. I was like, that looks stressful to make that film. Keeping that, like, they had like what? You probably had multiple script supervisors and fight scenes that are backwards, and one person's going forward, one person's going backwards. So I watch a film like that, and it's 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 fun to watch. It's interesting. There's like you wonder how they did certain things, And then I'm just like, I would not want to have made that film.
Yeah, totally.
I would be proud. Like I said before, you could be proud and put your name on something like that, but to actually be there looks like a stressful film to make. And I don't, there's a certain level of like making something. Why are we doing this? Are we doing it because we want to like get like get this message out of our soul and scream to the world? This is, our passion and our passionate message that everyone needs to hear, or do we actually like enjoy what we're doing, right? So
That is such an interesting thing. I never quite thought about it in such direct terms, but there are directors who, I mean, James Cameron comes to mind. It's like he doesn't seem to want to make a film unless the making of that film requires him to invent like a number of patentable things,
yeah,
which seems,
go to the bottom of the ocean, with
yeah, it just
some
seems
crazy
hard.
camera or something. Yeah, I mean, I respect all of that, you
Of
know
course, yeah.
all of it. We need that. um I would hope that even some of the simpler things that I do, whether it's, my I haven't made a feature yet, but commercials, music videos, anything like that, I'm pushing certain things for myself, you know. And it's good to push the medium. But yeah, I'd still want to enjoy what I'm doing, you know. Um I was like, and then you look like Martin Scorsese. I was watching, I haven't, there's a documentary Martin Scorsese did that's on Netflix that just came out about New York.
Yeah, with Fran Lebowitz.
Yeah, I want to see it. And I was like just going through like his movies and I just, went down a rabbit hole of Scorsese. And I was like, what's his relationship like status? And he's been married like 5 times, And I'm
Mm,
like, I'm sure he enjoys what he does, but I wonder what the rest of I'm just always curious about that, you know, because we put so much time and effort into to these things. Like, what does it do to the rest of our lives and the people around us? So I'm always, you and then go back to the movie, back to Fargo, and you think um Frances McDormand and which brother is it she's married to? I don't know which one.
I want to say Joel. I'm not sure.
I want to say Joel too. But that must have been fun too.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? And what it just seemed like it was you watch them, you see interviews about them making that film, and you're like, oh, it looks like they had a good time, and they're kind of could like just get into these characters and talk in those accents. And I'm from the Midwest, so it's close. People kind of talk like that, and a lot of things that we don't always see. I think the Coen brothers are good at that. They kind of take a few things that you know we don't always see together, and
yeah,
just mix. It almost feels like the wrong genre for that setting, which I really like.
yeah, yeah. They seem to do a number of things, like you're saying, that sort of feel like these little kind of trademarks or just yeah, tendencies. It's sort of like voice, the way voice just sort of comes to us as we do enough work and we see patterns of things that we're inclined to do. How do you think about that? Because looking at your body of work, it feels like it actually comes from the same person. It doesn't feel terribly schizophrenic. There's always something that we haven't seen before, something kind of quirky, right? Interesting casting, interesting faces, right? I see some parallels with the Coen brothers. And I wonder how you think about that in terms of your own voice, if what your relationship is to trying to identify it or trying to remain unconscious of it. I wonder what you
Yeah,
think.
it's always been that's always been a thing that we have to talk about, especially as commercial directors. They kind of want to pin you down as comedy or, you know, dramatic, heartfelt, um, or doing that camera like you do the camera technique director that does the I'm and I always find myself um kind of pitching on a range of things, and then I ask, okay, what is it? I'm just straightforward. What is it that you saw that you liked in my work? Sometimes it's obvious, and then sometimes I really don't know why they picked me. I would say most of what people say is that the there's like an authenticity to the people in it. So it could be because I do stuff with dance. I just kind of went down a path where things had dance in it, and I think that's because of music video stuff. And then I but I'm always struggling to just not go super polished and fake with everything. I mean, really, at the end of it, if I was gonna, I did a short film, the last 2 years, and called God, and it was about a guy in college and in a frat that was sort of questioning his sexuality, um, and that's really the tone. I was like, I just want to do something that's in the tone that that's more in my world of the tone. So, it's like we there's some magical realism in there. I didn't want to just go full on realism because that's boring for me. And then I didn't want to go full on comedy or anything. I wanted it to feel a little darker. And I just love music. I just need to have music and anything. So um those are sort of that's sort of the playground for me of the are those sort of things. And then people just I mean, I pitched on something. I see directors I pitch against, and I'm like, oh, they can totally get this from me because they've done this like 20, 30 times. I've done it on one commercial or something. I think, but when they're like, oh, but we're a brand and we want these authentic faces or whatever, that's what I really pounce on. And then I also dish out I try to get kind of clever with whatever it is, the way I use the camera or a certain technique or something. But honestly, you know, I get if I was doing all comedy, I wouldn't want to do it I would get bored. If I was doing all drama, I get bored. I'm just trying not to get pegged, you know?
Even when you're doing comedy, though, I actually feel like you always have a sense of visual flourish in there, or some kind of technical something that is clever and interesting and new, even when it's maybe a comedy spot. Um, it never really feels that way visually. So I think you kind of straddle the sense of cinematic style um, with humor, which is pretty sweet and pretty rare. Um, I'm glad you brought up your short film God, because the magical realism that you mentioned there, especially in that kind of opening fantasy, and when he's cooking the pizzas in the red light between scenes. I'd like to ask you about how you like to prep things, just in general. I mean, the scene from God comes to mind because it seems really tight and really amazingly successful in doing what it's trying to do. But in general, do you storyboard things? Thinking about the Coens, that people are very,
Yeah.
well established as storyboarders. How do you think about prep and planning out your pieces?
Yeah, I think there's a part of me that wants to just be like the messy painter, and just like give me the supplies and we'll figure it out. And it's almost like there's a very Woody Allen side of me, I would say, and this and on we're only talking about movies, um, and his character where it's I love hearing the stories about how he would just like give people the script on the day and all that kind of stuff. Like
Hmm.
there's a part of me that wants to do that, you know. But then I do come from commercials, where you talk about everything to death, you know. And I see the benefit in planning, and um I think coming from editing, I used to edit So I would edit for commercial stuff mostly, like Derek C in France. Um, myself, I would do my own. I would edit a lot of my own stuff. That short Hearing Colors, that little documentary that I did, I just did that myself. Um, so the edit to me is what I'm always trying to that's what I'm trying to figure out. To me, I always think of, like, to me, editing is the only part of filmmaking where I feel like an artist, where I feel the most like an artist,
Mm.
because it's the only time you can be alone with the material. Writing to me is the other side of it. But I know that writing something, and when you finally have something made, it can be very different. Um, so I think storyboarding and planning is like trying to get to that feeling of art, that I have when I'm editing, where I'm touching something. I'm literally like touching something. You can ask the editors I work with, or even the Q take guy on set. I'm always, can I touch it? Can I see? I want to like move the footage around. I want to play with it. I just, that's what we really want. I mean, at the end of the day, yes, we're with actors, we have scripts, but we're doing all of this to get, images that are moving and trying to put them together, and so I think, as much as I want to walk out there and just be like, we're going to figure this out, and like, you know, um, the planning is kind of key. And with God, um, actually talking about, Bergman, Wild Strawberries. I was, I adapted God from a short story by Benjamin Nugent, and I adapted it, just the whole thing, and it was like 45 pages, which is like, what can you do with 45 pages? But I just wanted to kind of write the whole story visually. And then I just started editing it down to what we needed to kind of capture the feeling. Like, what's the least, also because money, we don't have money to shoot all that. And it wasn't a feature. So I edited it down to 13 pages or something, right? And then it was like, I got it down, and then I said, well, this isn't fun. I'm not having fun with this. It's so serious, Like, what can I do? It's about this guy who's always daydreaming. So the daydream sequence that I start with, and that he kind of wakes up from, I just made that. And I was watching Wild Strawberries, and it's like he's going through his life, as an old man, looking at himself, or looking, looking at his memories. So I was thinking, well, why doesn't he just kind of look at the poem,
Mm.
In the story, he's memorized the poem, and he's always kind of thinking about the poem, or thinking about all this stuff. But what if we just kind of like visualize the poem, and he's kind of looking at at what's happening in the poem? And I really didn't want it to feel like a gotcha moment, like, oh, it's not real. So I wanted to make sure the lighting was weird, and like he was appearing and he was floating, and we never were, trying to fool anyone into thinking that was reality in any way. So yeah, I just was like, oh, that'll be more fun than just a straightforward, story about the poem. This is kind of just being in his head for a minute. So, and those are the kind of things that I think, once I kind of adapted that story and then looked at it, and I was like, this doesn't feel like, where's my personality in this? Where's the,
Mm.
why do we want to watch this?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I was trying to pitch that, actually, as a, so he came out with a book called Fraternity in July, and I was trying to pitch as a series, and I don't know who got it, but someone got it.
Mm.
Someone's wants to develop that into a series. I don't know if I'll be talking to them ever, but I have a feeling they've seen my short.
Yeah, I love the short, man.
Oh, thanks.
It's a beautiful investment, and it's a, that's such a, it takes so much effort to get out of the commercial groove and take those chances and
Yeah.
kind of start build something for yourself. So I'm really happy you're doing that. It's nice to see.
Oh, thanks.
Um, one thing that struck me about Fargo, watching it again, is just all the little details. There's so many little, just juicy, beautiful things. Just in the way that even thinking about some of the violence. It's
Yeah.
so straightforward and surprisingly brutal. I didn't really remember it being so ruthless, but it's gnarly. Like even just the quality of like the foot in the wood chipper, like the way when he's pushing down on the foot, it just looks like a real foot. Like it doesn't look like a fake foot.
Yeah.
I'm just like,
Yeah.
wow, they really got that right. Um, and so I wonder for you, is there a detail that comes to mind, a little moment or a favorite thing that you might want to draw attention to in the film?
Um, there's this stupid moment that I just really that's so to me is just it's not a big moment in the film. It's when Steve Buscemi it needs to bury the money, and this is when like storyboards might help, but he and no there's no talking, and you know exactly what he's thinking because he buries it in the snow, and then he looks left, and then he looks right, and it looks exactly the same. And you know what he's thinking. He's thinking, how the hell am I going to find this again? And then he stabs the ice scraper, the red ice scraper in the snow, like a little, flag, and leaves. And it's stupid. It's not like violent. It's nothing. I think his face is his face bleeding at that point.
Yeah.
Um, but I just thought that was just so simple that he's not like, there's no dialogue like, oh man, how am I gonna find this thing? You just get it.
Mm,
That for some reason that sticks out because because I think a lot of times when you're writing, you don't know if that's really gonna work. He looks left, not it's the same thing. You want to trust your audience would know.
yeah.
And I was watching it with my girlfriend recently, and she's like laughed at that when he stabbed it in the snow. She's like, yeah, maybe he'll find it. Um, but I like that. Same with what I like the scene when they're in the car and the Steve Buscemi's driving and his colleague cohort is not talk doesn't talk, and he kind of fills in that space, and I just like that's just funny to me. Those characters are funny. Like I would love to I like when you sit down to write, that doesn't have anything to do with the plot really of it so much, but it has a lot to do with it makes you smile, and it's just like it's a reason to watch that scene rather than just have them drive or talk about something stupid, and I just love that about those scenes when they're filling up the time with something that you don't really need to tell the story,
Yeah.
but it's like you watch these characters. It's like when you're out in the world and you tell somebody a funny story, like you have a place to put it, in a little film.
Yeah.
When I was in Walmart in Wisconsin over the pandemic, this this woman that worked there, I was trying to do self checkout, and she's chewing like um in my face. I was like, okay. And this is kind of towards the beginning of the pandemic when not everyone's wearing masks and stuff. And she's like chomping on some nuts or something. And she's looking at me and she's going, it's nuts. and I'm looking at her mouth with crumbs, and I'm like, "It's what?" And she's like, "It's nuts." And I'm like, "Why is she telling me what's in her mouth?" And she works there. She's not, she has some sort of sanity. I go, "It is?" And she goes, "Yeah, it's nuts out there." You know? Like they're closing restaurants down. And she was just wanting to talk to me about how nuts it was outside, but I was just seeing nuts. She kept saying it's nuts, and they were in her mouth. And I was like, I want that to me was like some Fargo shit
Yeah.
where I was like I was like impatient Steve Buscemi, like I just want to get out of there. Why are you telling me what you're eating right now? And she's like, "No, it's nuts out there." It's okay. Well, there's like some almond on her lip. Anyway.
Yeah, I think there's a deepening effect, right? There's a layering of setting and character around these things.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. Yeah, and it feels like you're there's like a texture to it, right? It's not just it's a deeper kind of like welcome when you're inside that town and you're seeing those kind of quirks.
Yeah, I mean, think about a film that of this size when they go way out of their way to have that scene with Margie's high school friend,
Yeah,
um, the Japanese guy,
yeah.
and
In the
what the,
Radisson or something like
yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah, what does it do
It's a nice
besides,
restaurant. It's a Radisson.
yeah, but what does it do besides deepen the reality, deepen the culture that these people live in, and tell us something about the character. Yeah, yeah, there's a lot of that, and it's interesting what the kind of investments they make in things that don't
Yeah.
push the story forward in a more nuts and bolts way. It's kind of beautiful. I wonder, is there anything in the film that you would change if you could, or do you feel like it's flawless in your mind?
Well, I don't know if I would say that I would change anything, but I was like listening to Roger Deakins' comments on it, commentary, and they were talking about there were scenes like when the two guys have the hoods and they're standing outside and they're talking about, have you seen anything strange going on around here? They said that originally they wanted to shoot that with just two hoods and you never saw who was in there. You
Mm,
just saw two hoods and you saw them talking and their arms moving and their hoods are so big that they would just never you'd never see who they were. And I was thinking I would just like to have seen that, scene where you're just watching two people talking and
yeah, two mummies.
you never see their face and and it's and it's the thing is it's not slapstick comedy, it's just funny. Um and those are the kind of funny things that really happen.
Yeah,
There's just things like that that I wish like they could have kind of like made like that version of the film. Those things that they kind of wanted to do but decided not to do. Um, yeah, but I don't, switch like changing anything in the film. I'll tell you, like I feel like um Francis McDormand's husband felt a little like I feel like he felt a little too Forrest Gump kind of for me.
sure,
And
that's fair.
I just that probably out of all the characters felt like the one that felt a little bit of a what's the word? Like
Slightly elevated or maybe slightly theatrical.
I mean their characters are kind of caricatures, but he felt a little like they pushed the caricature. So maybe
Yeah,
I just wonder if his character could have been a little more sort of I don't know, intelligent.
yeah, yeah, or just more grounded in something a little bit, just more anchored somehow. It's so tricky, it's just like the the thinness of a piece of paper would divide, that thing being more anchored or not.
Yeah. I mean that's a picky thing, but
But
I'm
it's real.
really
No, it's real. I'm happy you
digging. Yeah.
vocalized it because, yeah, it's important, I think, to call out those things that just don't quite feel a certain way, even though on paper they may seem that like they do kind of nail it. Um, yeah, that's a good one. That's a really good point. I hadn't really had that thought. One thing I noticed, which is just sort of a not that interesting of a thing, but when the Steve Buscemi character is killing the father, whose name I forget, um, he shoots him once, and then after the father shoots back and catches him in the face, he shoots him a few more times. And like in that first cut of him shooting, I think he fires 2 or 3 shots, but the last one of those, like there is no muzzle flare. It's like flash, flash, and then he just kind of does it. We hear it, but there's no actual muzzle flare there. The prop probably just didn't work.
It's a mistake.
Yeah, this didn't go on that during that trigger pull.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah,
That's what you would change in the movie? You'd be like, I need a muzzle flare.
no, just
If I
one
were to
thing.
change one thing in Fargo, it would be the last shot had a muzzle flare.
Yeah, yeah, no, that that's one thing that came to mind as just a flaw that I noticed. Because it actually I only noticed it because I was watching that scene like 3 times in a row because I just was just so enjoying the commitment that Buscemi has to that character and how he's just so in it, man. He's just totally in the pocket of that person.
Yeah.
And I just love when the way he freaks out there just feels so real to me. It's like the guy is a kind of a character, like we're saying, but totally anchored and totally feels, yeah, grounded in some truth.
I met Buscemi, or Buscemi, um, back when I was in my editing days. He did a film called Lonesome Jim that he directed.
Right. Yeah. I remember that.
Yeah, and I was editing at Radical Media and in their post house and outpost, and they're like, "Hey, there's a scene with Casey Affleck was in it, and there's a scene that they reshot that they need color corrected, just one scene." And like, okay, and Steve Buscemi's gonna come in and just sit with you for the day. I was like, oh, okay. So we just sat together, and I don't know if they gave me a credit or probably not. Um, but yeah, I was with him for the day, just me and him in the room, working on that. Didn't talk about Fargo. I was like kind of a rookie. Didn't want to like seem unprofessional, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
But now I
Naturally.
kind of wish I would have.
One thing I think I would change that comes to mind, there's just one shot, and Deakins was nominated for an Oscar for this film, which is pretty sweet. There's one shot after Jerry comes back from finding his father-in-law dead.
Yeah,
He comes back and Scotty's like, kind of freaking out his son. He sits down to take off his boots. Just the lighting in that one shot just felt a little sourcey and kind of rushed as the lights kind of coming from the, I don't know, living room or kitchen area towards him. It just felt a little sourcey. It's kind of stuck out in mind
yeah,
that maybe would have cut it a little bit differently. It's also hard to say, coming to however the journey of the exposure to the negative and
yeah,
processing to all the way here to 2020, 2021 now, seeing it. But yeah, there's one shot there that I thought, that maybe that was rushed on the day. It didn't feel as as realistic as the rest.
yeah.
It's kind of amazing that it was nominated for an Oscar for cinematography.
You should listen to the commentary because he's not easy on himself.
Yeah,
Even I don't know how many years later it is, 20 years later at when he does the commentary on
yeah.
that. Um, but he's like, "Oh yeah, oh that shot makes me sick." He's talking
Mm,
about some of the shots in the when they have the guy when she has the guy in the back of the cop car at the end, how they had to shoot it so close up because it was like a different day. So when they cut to her and him, they're different days
mm,
and the lighting's different.
mm,
And they had to fog the back window because it was like a sunny day. And they were pretty much there's only like one sunny shot in the whole thing. They just really were trying to just work with cloudy, overcast days. Um and yeah, there's like a couple shots like that where he's just like, that's shit. You know, and he just calls it out, and he's like that makes him angry watching it,
Yeah,
you know.
I'll have to check that out.
But I like hearing that. We that's what you want to hear on commentary too, you know. You want to hear that that you wish you could have redid that part, you know.
Yeah.
I like hearing that kind of stuff.
Yeah, me too. Actually, one thing came to mind. Another little flaw that I noticed was on the intro shot to Margie and Norm, her husband, in bed. We kind of pan around his paintings and then push in towards their bed. As we push in towards their bed, I think there's a camera shadow that kind of just comes into the side of frame and then kind of goes out. Yeah, it might have been, it could have been something else, but it looked like probably as the camera's moving in, something else was happening and that caught a little shadow on the right side of frame. It's also one of those things like in the film gate, you know, it's so close to the edge, you wonder, depending on what viewing system you had, how easy it would be to see that. Um, okay, last question I have for you is if you could ask the Cohens one question about this film or filmmaking in general, what might you ask?
Oh, I would if I could just have a candid conversation, it would just be like a no judgment conversation. It would just be about writing and, you know, where do they start? You know, what's or when do they know it's a good idea, and when do they like, okay, that's not going to work? How long
Mm,
does that take?
mm,
Um, I know they write a lot. I even went to a play that they did, or one of them did, in New York years ago, 10 years ago. So they're always making stories. Um, you know, so something like, and then when it's something like Fargo, I just would love to hear, you know, the spark for that. Which what was it? Because there's a spark, right? Some people will tell you it was an image. Some people will tell you it was the woman I talked to at Walmart, you know.
mhm,
But there's a spark there, and then you just start building on that. You know, I'm working on something like that myself.
mhm.
Um, and so that my question for them, and maybe it's out there. I haven't really, you know, Googled this, but what what did Fargo come from? You know, where did that come from?
Yeah.
What came first? The city, the person, the crime. You know, did you come up with that because that crime is really kind of, it's it it's not that strange. I mean, it's the kind of thing that would be in like it would, you know what? It's one of those things that would be on like a Netflix 4-part series right now. Oh, he's like, you know, try to get his wife, you know, it would be like a mystery, you know. Did he really do it? Um, but what was that the first thing? And then they said, okay, we want to put it in this town, and then we're gonna do it in Fargo because that's just a funny town to do it in. I guess my question would be like, what's the spark?
You know, one thing that just came to mind was I was just thinking about that scene with the two guys talking with their hoods on, or I think just one has the hood in the end,
Yeah.
as the bartender is kind of recounting the story of this, you know, funny looking fella who comes in and talks to him. Um, there's just, you know, thinking about this leap between very good writing and very good direction, and people like the Coens who have both of those things. It's amazing because the writing is so good, but then they get this cadence in the line read where the guy tells the whole story and he pauses and he's like, "End of story."
Yeah.
And just like on the page, that would just read totally differently to me, you know.
Yeah.
But that guy's delivery of it redefines those words in my mind. And every time I hear, you know, end of story, I can't help but think about that because it's such a unique take on those words, and somehow it changes their meaning and becomes this hilarious comedic beat
Yeah.
that's like an inside joke with me and my brother. And that's something that might be a question that I had if I had one, was like, was that on the page I wonder how premeditated something like that might be, because it feels like one of those things that, a person who is of that person's age, maybe that guy's like 60 something, could be even 70. Maybe he's just like a little bit out of time, and that's just the way he talks. He's like end of
Yeah.
story, like that's the beautiful thing about it, is it's funny and quirky, but it's also totally grounded in a reality that
Hmm.
gives it credibility.
Yeah, I was for a couple months we 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 escaped New York and went to my parents' cabin in Wisconsin. So we were there for 3 months
Wow.
of the beginning of the pandemic,
Yeah, long time.
and we became friends with the neighbors across the street who are probably, I mean, in their 60s, 70, in their 60s,
Mm.
probably. Those were like our friends over there, you know? Like, those are the people we chat with. Um, and not a lot was going on, but everyone was it was very everyone was talking about their boat. Oh, we're gonna go on the boat and go, the kind of fish they caught, and their accents were all kind of rounded like Fargo-y. And I was just like, oh man, someone's gonna get murdered up here. Like something's gonna happen. Like I don't trust it. It gets real dark at night, and there's a river flowing through the backyard. And you hear gunshots going off all the time. One day I'm going for a run, I just stopped. I'm like, I'm not running over there. Just gunshots, like the deer hunters and stuff. Um, so yeah, it's just fun that see, that setting was great. It felt very Fargo up there
Mm.
in Wisconsin.
Yeah. Yeah, you're in it. Well, Greg, thank you, man. This is really fun.
Yeah, man. I hope there's something there.